Is Creed Bratton an anarchist? Is Dwight Schrute a staunch conservative? And where exactly does Michael Scott fall on the political spectrum? Because the internet is a thief of all joy.
You are a thief of joy.
Let's talk about the political affiliations of our beloved Office characters. Using only evidence displayed from the series should be fun, not heavy. This is not a political video. This is a literary analysis video. So on that point, this is a photo of me from high school. That's right, I played tuba for the high school band. Just let that set in for a minute. Why show this? I didn't need to say that I was a nerd in high school for your brain to do that work for me based on your own bias, which is fair because I am a nerd.
10-point power word.
That's it.
That's called a labeling connotation. When I said that I was in the high school band, you heard
Nerd.
So when I say that someone is a Republican or a Democrat, you may hear,
why are you the way that you are?
Or maybe you think you heard me say that that person's the devil, or whatever other connotation label you have for that topic. Set all of that aside for now, because this is supposed to be a fun and abstract way of just thinking about the show in a unique way. These aren't real people.
You're not real, man.
And remember, this is good life advice, I guess. People are more than just one thing, and generally speaking, the breadth of variance within every political ideology, or any ideology for that matter, the motives for why a person has for subscribing to a particular party or theory is all over the place. So, now that I've wasted all of this time to say, let's just debate the labels in the comments and save the actual political debates for a video that can actually deal with those things in a smart and wise way. Because I myself, while you may not believe this, have no reason to create this video other than I just want to entertain and get some ad revenue from your viewing. So I have no other agenda here. Let's get started. Start with a few gimmies on both ends of the spectrum, and they both put us right there in the accounting bay. So we're going to use that as a framework for how we move around the Dunder Mifflin office. And let's start with everyone's, an accountant, Oscar Martinez.
I am an accountant at a failing paper supply company in Scranton.
Oscar is an accountant at Dunder Mifflin who is openly gay after Michael outed him, and often the voice of reason around the office. He's intelligent, well-read, and frequently corrects his coworkers, kind of in a know-it-all manner. Oscar is a politically and socially conscious person of color, and canonically, while Oscar doesn't necessarily self-identify, except if you count the pride stars on his political, yard sign, but that was one shot in the finale. So while Oscar doesn't necessarily self-identify his own political affiliation, his coworkers do.
Now you believe in Dwight's traditions when some Democrat looks it up on Wikipedia?
But for all of those things that we have there, he's a pretty easy shoe-in here that he's a progressive liberal Democrat. See, that's not hard. This is fun, right? So let's stick to the accountants for just a second and talk about the elephant in the room, Angela Martin / Lipton. She is the head of the accounting department. Oscar's boss, by the way, is known for her strict adherence to the rules, unless they apply to her.
I think it would be immoral for Aaron to cheat on Andy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't you cheat on Andy?
Yes, and he didn't like it.
She's conservative, often judgmental.
Kind of judgmental.
Angela is deeply religious and has a complicated relationship with several people in the office, including some that have friction, and then some that are of a different kind of friction. I think Angela is pretty easily identified as somewhere in the conservative religious right. And so that's just the model that we're going to be going with today. We're going to talk about a little bit about their character and then why I would maybe put them where they would be. If you disagree, throw your ideas in the comments. Love to hear them. Love that side of the debate. I also think it's interesting that both Oscar and Angela, who are diametrically opposed sides of the political spectrum, have a plot line later in the series in which they are able to put their hypocrisy and their judgmentalism aside in order to help one another out. It's kind of a touching storyline. We could learn a lot from that.
Someone should write a song about that.
All right, let's go ahead and round out the accounting bay of desk with Kevin.
This is Kevin.
Just sweet, sweet Kevin. This one's a little bit challenging to think through where Kevin lands on the political spectrum or who maybe he votes for. The big guy's a little hard to peg because he really doesn't have much of a storyline in the second half of the series. Most of his moments in the show mainly follow the same model as Michael's roast.
I can't decide between a fat joke and a dumb joke, boom, roasted.
So I would suggest that Kevin, as a lover of simple pleasures, financial irresponsibility, maybe, and his shocking ability to actually see through the motives of most people.
You suck.
I'll say that Kevin is pretty much above or below probably politics in general. Like, he's apolitical. Maybe a firm subscriber to the Candy Party.
No one else should even try.
That was terrible. And if he votes, he either just does that thing that I did in middle school where you just go A, B, C, D, E, and then, like zigzag, or he just finds the funniest names on the ballots.
Kidnapping is the asportation of a person against the person's will.
What?
So Michael asported him.
Meredith, I would suggest, votes Democrat, but it's a little bit more complex than that. She's really a libertarian at heart, wanting to maintain her personal freedoms, mostly with men, but with little interference from the man as possible. Her no-nonsense solutions to problems.
Have you ever had sirloin steak, honey?
Her strong personal responsibility and shocking self-awareness.
I don't mind telling you that I have an addiction. I do. To porn.
Along with an unapologetic approach to life, is maybe as Ron Swanson as someone gets in The Office, which kind of blew my mind as I was thinking about it. As someone who doesn't strike me much, based on evidence at least in the show, to care for financial things, fiscal side of fiscal policy is probably not much on Meredith's mind. I am certain that she votes left in order to preserve her social freedoms. This is my thought. Next up, Creed.
This is Creed.
Creed Bratton is also equally kind of difficult, and this could be definitely open to interpretation, so I needed to pick something, so this is what I went with. Creed is the eccentric and mysterious quality assurance director.
Quality assurance.
Quality assurance director. He has a dark, enigmatic past and often makes very bizarre and cryptic statements.
Nobody steals from Creed Bratton and gets away with it. The last person to do this disappeared. His name? Creed Bratton.
This is just saying what Creed is. And Creed's known for his unpredictable and unconventional behavior and is for sure a free spirit. On one hand, I want to say that he's an anarchist, as his antisocial behavior is a consistent theme throughout the series. He even maybe killed a guy. But Creed is much more complex than all of this. Creed thrives in the shadows. He exists within the office, but the expectations of what Creed may bring to his job every single day is so low that I don't think he ever even works. And as such, he blatantly steals from Dunder Mifflin, either actual office equipment or at least company time. He seems to thrive operating under the table. And without a system to exploit, like anarchy, he'd be up a creek. So I don't think he's an anarchist, and I don't think a cult constitutes as a political party.
I've been involved in a number of cults, both as a leader and a follower. You have more fun as a follower, but you make more money as a leader.
So I would say that Creed votes in a way to even out the two-party system that we have here in the United States, at least, to create a logjam, if you will. That while all the bureaucrats are arguing, he's able to stay busy and live large. That's assuming he's the real Creed Bratton and that he can actually vote.
10 years ago, for tax reasons, I faked my own death. I've been collecting benefits as my own widow ever since.
That all brings us to Daryl Philbin. Daryl is a warehouse foreman who later transitions into an office position in the company, doing I don't know what. He's practical, hardworking, apparently a clean freak, and yet again often serves as a voice of reason amidst the office chaos. Daryl has a dry sense of humor and is ambitious, striving for better opportunities throughout the series. And like most characters in The Office, he doesn't say many directly political things. But we do have a storyline early in the office in which he tried to organize something like a union in the warehouse.
This would not happen if we had a union.
That's what I'm talking about. Whoa. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which, at least in modern day US politics, puts him distinctly towards the left. Daryl is a little complex, and I'm not really sure I would label him based on what we see throughout the series as far left, so we're gonna go with left-leaning centrist. He seems too critical of a thinker and common sense-ish to me to be diehard anything, but I'm not sure. Like everything else in this video, leave your thoughts in the comments where you would put him on the spectrum. Quick pit stop in the kitchen for Ryan's desk. Ryan Howard starts as a temp at Dunder Mifflin and quickly rose to a corporate executive position before falling back to a temp role. He is ambitious, opportunistic, and often displays some narcissistic tendencies. Ryan's often looking for the next big opportunity and not afraid to manipulate situations to his advantage. And so politically speaking, I think that Ryan is kind of easy to assess, but the more I thought about it, the more difficult it actually became to articulate. Hypocrisy is Ryan's style.
$250 is nothing to the world's biggest Smokey Robinson fan.
Yeah.
Always worrying about what people will think about him, but also worried about what will get him ahead. And if you think about it, those things are conflicting values, which causes a lot of Ryan's many start, stops, and poor decisions throughout the series. My gut is that Ryan's chameleon-like behavior is that he just chameleons around whomever he's talking to.
It's whoever, not whomever. No, it's whomever.
If he's talking to someone on the right, he's as far right as just someone on the right. And if he's talking to someone on the left, he's as Dukakis as you get. So what I would say is he pretends to share people's values no matter who he's talking to, but secretly doesn't really bother to vote. He just probably orders the I voted stickers on Amazon and wears them to work the next day to shame his coworkers.
Wolf condoms!
There is an actual interesting parallel here, which will divert from our geographical trip around the office to talk about a bunch of the corporate characters in the show. People like Jan, David Wallace, and maybe even Robert California, who will get his own spot later in this video. But corporate entities and tech elites find themselves in such a interesting, difficult place in today's political conversation, looking to both preserve their social cool points with the public so they promote social progressivism while privately lobbying for conservative legislations to get tax breaks and the like. And like everybody has values that conflict with other values. So I guess it's just a matter of prioritization from there for who they would donate to versus who they would vote for. Either way, Ryan and the corporate characters present amorphously between private and public functions, but vote and donate potentially in conflicting ways with what they say. Just one of the many issues of our extremely divided two-party system that exists in the States now. Someone smarter than me can talk about all that.
You guys, I'm like really smart now. You don't even know.
Moving on to Ryan's counterpart, Kelly, back in the annex. Kelly Kapoor is the bubbly and often superficial customer service representative. She is obsessed with pop culture, her appearance, and often displays very dramatic and emotionally driven decision making. My gut here is that Kelly is voting for whoever Ryan tells her to.
I'm a Nader guy.
If I have to vote for someone, I don't want it to be someone who can beat me.
Or when they're not together, she's voting for whoever the prettiest first lady or potential Madam President, maybe. And if nothing else there, in our current model, she probably falls in line with whomever TikTok says to vote for. Back now squarely in the annex, Toby is an interesting one. Toby Flinderson is the human resource representative at Dunder Mifflin. He's a mild-mannered, soft-spoken, and often the target of Michael Scott's disdain.
Whomever's name is Toby, why don't you take a letter opener and stick it into your skull?
Hey, Toby's empathetic, and he has a strong sense of duty that is shown throughout the series. Often caught in the middle of office conflicts due to his role, and often towing the line of inclusion, acceptance, equity, diversity, and exhibiting patience and genuine care for his fellow employees. And as someone who was maybe formerly a devout Christian, but no longer, he's pretty easily identifiable as a liberal Democrat, maybe until he started strangling people around Scranton. That changes him, man.
And I blow this building up.
Now the last of the annex bunch, at least for like 2 seasons, Gabe Lewis.
Gabriel Susan Lewis.
Gabe is introduced to us in a role that here's your trivia for the day. He is introduced to us as the Director of Emerging Regions Coordination at Sabre.
I am Coordinating Director for Emerging Regions.
He's awkward and socially clueless and eager to please his superiors, which is important. Gabe attempts to fit in with the office's culture, and those attempts are often unsuccessful. He often finds himself alienated. Gabe is a weird guy, so we're going to go with a weird assessment. Maybe weird. Maybe weird. Ideologically, I'd say that Gabe is probably something like a technocrat, which is a little loosely defined based on who you asked. I think of it like how in Idiocracy they voted Terry in to be president because he was like the coolest and the strongest and the toughest. And Technocracy would vote for people who are like of the scientific and technical elite class. It's like a gross generic simplification of the idea, but I'd say it would be akin to like Gabe voting or fantasizing of someone like Elon Musk on one side or Neil deGrasse Tyson on the other side for president. But in reality, Gabe just votes for whoever Sabre tells him to.
Because corporate told me to.
Off from there, we have a quick round of minor managers, starting with Charles Minor, play on words.
Minor? I hardly know her. Hello?
Vice President of the Regional Sales for Dunder Mifflin, who comes to oversee the Scranton branch in season 5. He's strict, no nonsense, and values professionalism and productivity above everything else. Charles often clashes with Michael Scott and Jim Halpert due to their laid-back and unconventional approaches. On top of all that, he served as an executive for a steel company,
Satakoy Steel.
Beautiful.
Prior to moving to paper. For all of those reasons, Charles Minor gives me strong conservative Republican vibes. D'Angelo now, he's a tricky one to peg.
Kev's got me pegged.
Leave your thoughts in the comments before I even get into it, but I would suggest that if he were a politician, he would take a populist approach, and I say that because that's what he did in The Office.
That's my attitude right now in this room. That's my attitude on Ice Cream Thursdays.
Because the speeches, the manipulation, the private inner circle, and his independent, non-ideological approach to leadership points towards a populism worldview to his own detriment most of the time.
Doctor is in!
If I had to take a stab, I would say he's probably Republican, but that's maybe just based on his jewelry. Ed Truck, though, the former no-nonsense manager of Dunder Mifflin when Michael was a salesman.
Ed Truck.
Well, he doesn't really give us enough to know what's going on in his head to make an assessment.
Ed was decapitated.
Best writing I've ever done in my life. Robert California, though. Bobby is complex. He's the mysterious, charismatic, and manipulative character who becomes the CEO of Dunder Mifflin Sabre. He's often known for his enigmatic speeches, psychological insights, and unconventional leadership style. Robert's behavior often confounds his employees, as he seems to just enjoy exerting control and stirring up the office dynamics. And I didn't know how to really say this, but like Robert doesn't play politics, he is politics.
Great to meet you. Likewise, I'm Bob Kazamakis. Pleasure.
Like if I had to go to a D&D metaphor here, Robert is a rogue bard who achieved a high post of leadership somehow in this world, and he just rides the waves of change as they inevitably come, and he just keeps cashing out, which, like, probably fiscally conservative and socially liberal, which maybe, I guess, right now would put him as a libertarian.
Buffett operates the same way.
But like, I don't know if in the mid to early 2010s, if that put him as a Republican. Everything's so weird now. So leave your thoughts in the comments. Where's Robert California? I want to say libertarian, but also that doesn't seem fun. And also doesn't really seem to be what he would vote for. Let me know your thoughts. Let's skip Michael, as it's more fun to group our main characters at the end of this video and take a look at the rest of the sales staff. But on our way, let's actually take a quick pit stop over with the receptionist for the second half of the series, Erin.
Are you Republican or Democrat?
Both.
How does that work?
I don't know. I just joined both parties. I really like them both.
Erin Hannon is a receptionist at Dunder Mifflin who replaces Pam. She's sweet, she's naive, She's often has a childlike demeanor, which we find out has to do with her upbringing.
Aaron is an orphan.
No, I have parents. I wasn't raised by them.
Okay, hey, relax, Annie. We got crazy story covered.
But more on that in a second. She's enthusiastic about her work. She deeply values her relationships with her coworkers, and she has a strong desire to be liked and accepted, often going out of her way to please other people. Considering her background as a foster child that we learn about throughout her time in the series, there's probably a proclivity to lean left in order to preserve and improve and maybe even sometimes reform the social services there, which is probably being more gracious than what Aaron deserves, because I'm not really sure she has the critical thinking skills necessary to choose even a political affiliation.
I always wish I could vote for both candidates.
I know. It's oh, they made it that far. They're obviously going to do a great job.
And would just vote for the wacky waving inflatable guy if that were possible.
Wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man.
Which puts her right there with Kevin.
Da-da!
Let's do a quick round of sales staff. I would say Phyllis is an independent, voting for whoever paid off whatever mafia family Bob belongs to.
He was exonerated on all counts. None of the witnesses even showed up for the trial. None.
Andy comes from old money, which makes it weird. I would say he's pretty comfortably coming from a long line of conservative Republicans, for sure.
I come from a line of wasps, so long it leads back to Moses.
But like we discussed earlier, there's some cognitive dissonance that happens when you have more money, how you present versus how you vote kind of comes in conflict, at least today. But based on his parents' behavior in that one episode, and Andy's insistent need to please them for most of the series, I would say early on he votes Republican, but as he rebels against his parents' legacy, he probably swaps sides, at least just to spite them.
Him.
Canonically speaking, this is an easy one. Stanley is a former Black Panther member.
Here's what I used to look like. Look at those biceps. We were fighting the power and eating whatever we wanted.
But that's a young man's game, it would seem. These days, I doubt Stanley bothers to make it to the polls. Karen is for sure a Democrat.
Little pantsuits.
Which brings us to our main characters. And maybe I missed somebody, so leave whoever I may have missed in the comments. But we're going to start with Jim and Pam, who I don't think, as far as I could tell, ever make a political statement at all. And that would track, as the writers use these characters as straight man to bounce the chaos and the humor off of them to allow an anchor point for us, the audience. So it stands to reason that, we see something pretty centrist going on in their behavior and in their speech throughout the series. But maybe there's enough to suggest that they aren't completely on the same page. Jim is a salesman, is charismatic, eager to follow his dreams, witty, bored, and often undermines Dwight's trajectory. Jim is a loving husband and a father. His general aura is live and let live, hates confrontation, and also seems very aware of the many faux pas that Michael steps in throughout the series.
I bet you would. Just try not to be too gay on the court.
I wouldn't call Jim a hippie, but when Jim talks about his dreams for life, it's pretty hippie-ish.
I'd probably buy a big piece of land in Maine, work in town, somewhere I could bike to.
And then on the weekends, would you hacky sack back to reality and spend time with your wife and kids?
Mr. Jock Hipster.
All of which I would suggest maybe leans Jim a little more left. Pam, on the other hand, does have a little bit of variance in her storytelling, with the writers having some fun, creating interesting stories throughout the series that maybe represent one-off attributes that we don't see again later in the series. Like at one point, she wanted everyone to have a new chair in spite of the fact that it would make her job harder. That's socialism-ish.
Socialist.
Or the time she took a hardline stance and put up a sign to shame individuals who weren't doing their fair share of the work, which is pretty Republican-ish. She did ship Oscar and the warehouse guy, and, so then she had a gay friend there, which is, hey, progressive.
I guess I do have a gay friend.
Overall, though, I would say she is concerned for following the proper protocol around the office, and she's a little bit more religious than Jim, as well as an inspiring artist, neither of which put any political ideology anywhere here. I don't really know. I just know that there's a little bit of a yin-yang thing going on with Jim and Pam. She's shown more often than not to be resistant or at least hesitant to change, whereas Jim is quickly ready to absorb any change.
Well, if Pam says she won't go, then we're gonna need a lot more than counseling.
And she also exhibits a pull yourself up from your bootstraps mentality in both the Michael Scott Paper Company arc and how she lied to create a new position for herself. I'm going to go with she's center and right-leaning.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Which I don't know how that's going to get received. Leave your thoughts in the comments. That leaves us with Dwight and Michael. Starting with Dwight, though, Dwight, like Pam, is presented in a plethora of ways throughout different points in the series. Sometimes he's a farmer that doesn't understand city life. Sometimes he's a sci-fi nerd. Sometimes he's in touch with reality. Sometimes he's susceptible to believe anything that anyone tells him. And, just completely out of touch. No! Sometimes he's aware of pop culture stuff, and sometimes he's completely out of touch. Politically, it's hard to say, as we have just so much to pull from, like the time that Dwight's shown hiring day workers only to
tell them that they'll get paid at 6 p.m. At 5:45, a certain INS agent throws them in the back of a van, drops them off in the middle of Harrisburg, and tells them it's Canada.
Which feels bad. Anything with immigration feels Republican-ish now, which is not true. Dwight's take on the healthcare in the office seems to represent a general dehumanizing of people around him for political and financial risk.
In the wild, there is no healthcare. In the wild, healthcare is, ow, I hurt my leg, I can't run. A lion eats me, and I'm dead.
I'm not really sure what the political bent of small-time beet farmers in Pennsylvania are. And then also, generally speaking, his heritage as a Pennsylvania Dutch isn't really helpful because the Amish aren't really the most political bunch. But when they do vote, they do tend to vote more conservative. So I think we see two general drifts of Dwight, an early and a late season Dwight. For that early and maybe arguably most of the series, I think that we could say that Dwight's insistent need to please authority, almost preferring a dictatorial leadership, along with those other things that we explored.
A little about me. I respond to strong leadership.
And even now, I guess, if you think about it, like Jim repurposing the several fascist speeches seem like completely normal to Dwight.
You are all about authority.
Yes, I am.
So for his general lack of grounded sense of reality, also, early Dwight could be easily swept up into a demagogue political movement, and probably a far-right one.
The Bund.
But really, by the end of the series, I think we see a Dwight who is settling down, who's able to get a little bit more grounded. That's a farming pun. And someone who finds a little bit more comfort in his life and also begins to see the people around him as people. And at which point, I would say that Dwight probably becomes a libertarian. That feels right. All of that brings us to Michael Scott. Michael is the regional manager of Dunder Mifflin for most of the series, at least the first 7 seasons. He's often inappropriate and immature, but has a deep desire to be loved and admired by his employees, but he actually also is shown to genuinely care for his people. Now, throughout the series, Michael's humor involves inspiration from all over the political spectrum, but probably what we see the most is that Michael's immaturity doesn't allow him to identify that society is progressing to a point in which these jokes that were okay are not really okay anymore.
The Lincoln assassination just recently became funny. I need to see this play like I need a hole in the head.
Now, we do see him on several occasions attempt to deal with racial tensions, which he created himself. He's also environmentally conscious.
I would like to talk to you today about recycling. Well, yes.
Oh, we don't recycle.
You don't? Why have I been separating the trash into whites and colors?
A giant owl gave an impassioned speech about giving hoots and not polluting. I never polluted again.
And he attempts to have, at least in a Michael Scott way, an open-mindedness about other cultures.
Is your marriage the kind of thing where when you die, she has to throw herself on a fire?
And he seems to fully support gay pride.
Gay, good.
I think if I had to sum up Michael, I would say he's a moderate Democrat. He probably would have voted for Biden because, Biden's from Scranton, and he probably voted for Obama to impress Stanley and Ryan.
I would like to congratulate Daryl, Stanley, and maybe Kelly on the inauguration of Mr. Barack Obama.
But in reality, Michael Scott, fictional reality, Michael Scott didn't vote for anybody because he didn't know where to vote at.
I just figured out where I was supposed to go to vote.
Or he forgot it was voting day. But that's my list. What do you think? Argue it out in the comments. All of that helps boost this video. Share it with your friends, share the list with your friends, come up with your own list. Whole comment. Just let me know. On my channel, I've gone into every single episode of The Office. I now have like 5 episodes left, so check all of that out. And now I'll just say thanks to all these fine folks who are supporting the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.